Which wildlife species stand to lose out due to climate change here in the UK?
Are there some plants and animals who might be winners as temperatures rise and rainfall patterns change? Let's find out in this next session winners and losers.
Okay, hello everybody. So my name is Emily and I work for Devon Wildlife Trust. You might have heard of a wildlife trust before. We are based all around the UK, so each county has its own wildlife trust. And what we do, we look after all the wildlife that lives around us. And we do that by looking after their habitats. So their habitats are their home, and if we provide a nice, healthy, happy home for them, the wildlife in them will really thrive. Now, I have got a talk for you today about climate change and the impacts it has on wildlife. So I'm just going to try and share with you my pictures that I have with me. Bear with me. So hopefully you can all see this. This isn't working. Hang on a moment. Okay, so I'm back. Hopefully this works now. So for those of you that might have missed that, my name's Emily and I work with Devon Wildlife Trust. So I've said before, sorry if I'm repeating again, but the Wildlife Trusts are all over the UK and we look after the habitats where animals live. So wherever you live in the UK, you should have a wildlife trust near you. Now, hopefully, I'm going to show you my presentation. Hopefully this is going to work now. So, okay, so my presentation, it's called Winners and Losers. So what do I mean by that? So climate change has a real big impact on all sorts of things, including us and all the animals and plants. Now, I'm going to talk to you today about what impacts it might have, and a little bit later on we're going to play a little game called Winners and Losers, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. So first of all, what is climate change doing to wildlife? I'm going to give you a few moments to try and think for yourselves, what do you think climate change is doing to our wildlife? I'll give you about 10 seconds and have a little think to yourselves. Okay, so hopefully you've had a little bit of a think. Now, you might have, whilst discussing or thinking then to yourselves, thought about maybe what animals it might be affecting. You already might know of some animals. So a lot of people, when they think about climate change in animals, they think about polar bears and penguins, because actually climate change is really impacting them. So polar bears, obviously, they live in the really cold places, and penguins where the ice is melting. Now, because climate change is heating the world, that means it's melting at quite a faster rate than it would be normally. And so polar bears are losing their home. Now, and same with penguins. And in warmer countries, you might have said something like elephants or koala bears in hot countries are affected by climate change, because it's too hot and it's too dry, they haven't got any water, or maybe there are fires coming. They are all serious matters and they are really affecting those wildlife. But in our country, climate change is affecting us too. So in my talk, I'm going to talk a little bit to you about the wildlife here that's affected by climate change. And at the end, I'm going to go through some things that you guys might be able to do to help it. Okay, so first of all, let's start with the basics. Animals, I'm hoping you all know, are adapted to suit their habitat. Now, what does that mean? I'm going to give you a few moments just to have a little think to yourself, maybe remind yourself, what does the word adapted mean? So I'm going to give you about 10 seconds or so, have a little think. Okay, so hopefully you got that. Animals are adapted to their habitat, and that means that they have got special features about them that help let them live in certain places. So for example, if you look on the left here, it says they have special features that allow them to do all sorts of things, like find food, protect themselves, have babies, and build homes. So I've got a picture of a frog here, because where do frogs live? Hopefully you know that. That's right, ponds or watery places or wet places, and they need ponds, don't they, to live, because actually that's where they have their babies. They lay their eggs in water, so they do need water. They don't need to be in it all the time, but they do need it, especially to have their babies. And they find food such as flies that come to the pond, or maybe worms near on the sort of wet mud. So they need the ponds and wet places to live. Now, the problem is that habitats are changing. So what I mean by that is, because of climate change, it's heating the world up, it's heating everything up just a few degrees more, which means habitats are changing. They're getting warmer, drier. Some places, weirdly, they're getting wetter. But in most of our places in the UK where we live, a lot of places are getting drier and warmer. So, for example, where frogs live, and they live in ponds, but they also live in habitats called bogs. You might have heard of that word before, and that's a sort of habitat that you might find if you live near a moor, like Dartmoor where we live, or if you live in Scotland. There's quite wet places. You might have got your boots stuck, maybe if you've gone for a walk. And frogs and other creatures just love those wet places. And the problem is, it's drying up too much now that the weather is getting warmer, which means animals like frogs and the other animals, like dragonflies, that like these wet places, are finding it harder to live. And as I said before, animals are adapted to their habitats. They can change over time a little bit. They can change to suit their habitat. If it does get drier, might be able to change. They might be able to change what food they eat. The problem is with climate change is that it's heating up too fast. It's almost too fast for a lot of animals to catch up with. Now, it's not too bad if you can fly. So if you can fly and you live in a place that's too hot now, you can move north. So I've got a picture here of the world, and you might know that the hottest places are in the middle of the world. So if you want to escape the hot places, you can go north, or you could go south. If you go north, if you see where the arrows point, they actually point towards where we live. So we're getting a lot of animals move north to us. It's like, as I said, it's not too bad for birds because they can fly, they can escape the hot places and find somewhere cooler again up north or south. But if you're a frog, you can't fly. So it's a little bit more difficult for animals like frogs and plants. Plants can't move, can they? So if you're a bird, you can escape a little bit easier. And this picture is really cool because this is quite a rare bird that visits our country sometimes. It's called a hoopoo. Now, hoopoos come from Africa, and they are really amazing birds, and we only sometimes rarely get them here. And if you live in the south of the UK, you can see them very, very rarely. But if it gets warmer, we might find that these visitors might come to us more and more often. So that's kind of a positive thing about climate change in a way, that we're going to get some more exciting visitors because they don't want to be in their hot country as much. They're coming to us. So hoopoos are really cool. Now, in our country, so this is our country, this is the UK, and you can see the arrows are all going north as well. So not only animals around the world might visit us, but animals that live down in the south might go up north because down the south might be too warm for them now. So actually what scientists have discovered, animals like cod are swimming more north now. Than there's not very many of them down where we live in the south. They're actually going north. So if you live in Scotland, there might be more cod around where you are, but less around the south where I am. So different animals are moving about the place. Now, this is not just fish, this is birds as well, and some insects as well. The kind of tricky thing about it is if you already live in the north, if an animal lives in the north, they probably live there because they like that it's colder up there. So in Scotland, it is a bit colder up there. So animals that live in the mountains and in the pine forest, they quite like that it's cold. The problem is if it gets warmer, they might not have anywhere more north to go because Scotland is right at the top of the UK. Where else can they go if it gets too warm? So we don't want it to get too much more warm, because we don't want to lose these animals. Now, let me just check something, if I can. Okay, I will leave that actually for now. Let's carry on with this for now, and I'll keep going. So the next thing that it changes, so I've said at the moment it changes habitats. So places are getting hotter and drier. Animals are moving north to colder places. And the third thing is, which I'm going to talk about now, the seasons are changing. Now, hopefully you all know about the seasons already. We have, let's think together, spring, summer, autumn, winter. So we're in winter now, I think. And the problem is with climate change is that these seasons are kind of changing. Actually, today, if you went outside, it's actually not that cold, is it? And that's because gradually climate change is making it get warmer. So animals and plants are getting a little bit confused. So when do you normally, have a little think, when do you normally see flowers start appearing? What season do they start appearing? And it's the same season that lots of baby animals are born. Have a little think for a moment. Okay, hopefully you got it. It's spring. So springtime is my favourite time of year. You get lots of flowers appearing. Now the problem is this at the moment in the UK are some flowers are changing when they're starting to appear. If they appear earlier, the insects might not be aware that they are coming out earlier. So they might, when they wake up, they might not have any food. And the same with bees. Actually, bees, that what they're finding is they are waking up and they're waking up earlier and the flowers aren't there to feed. So they're struggling to find food to eat. Now, it's weird. So trees are also having their leaves come out earlier, which might affect food chains like caterpillars. It might mean that caterpillars are getting confused and they won't wake up in time for when the leaves are coming out. So it's kind of weird. It's a little bit like if you imagine you've got your routine, you wake up, you go to school, you finish school, you go home, you have dinner, you go to bed. Animals have the same thing as well. So if an animal wakes up after maybe a whole few months of hibernation, wakes up, expects to find its food like normal, and things have changed. It's like the time's changed. It's a bit like you suddenly being woken up at midnight and your mum saying, you have to go to school now. It's a bit weird, isn't it? And that's why it confuses the animals. Now, the problem is with bees, I put this little cartoon bee in the corner because bees are actually in trouble. Now, you might not know, but there are actually a lot of bee species in our country. There are 250 or over 250 types of bee, which is amazing. However, their numbers are declining, so they're getting lower. And you can see that little bee in the corner says that 23 species have gone extinct already in the past sort of 100 or so years, which is quite a lot. And it's not just climate change is that why they've gone down in numbers. There's other things as well, like not enough people putting out flowers for them, or their habitats are being destroyed. So we don't want climate change to ruin their numbers as well. Okay, so I've just gone over 3 things. So habitats are changing, places are getting hotter and drier. Animals are having to move out. If they can move out, if they can fly, then brilliant. If they can swim, then brilliant. And thirdly, the seasons are changing. So animals are getting a bit confused at when their food will be available. So 3 different things. Now, I'm going to play a little game with you called Winners and Losers. And the idea is you have to guess whether you think this animal is a winner or a loser. And now, what do I mean by that? I mean, if it's a winner, it will be an animal who's doing quite well at the fact because of climate change. So climate change is having a good effect on that animal. So it's a little bit like, do you remember the hoopoo? I said that funny bird from Africa. We're getting more of those now in our country, which is a good thing. So that would be a winner. Now, a loser would be obviously an animal who isn't doing well because of climate change. Okay, so I'm going to let you have a little think. This creature here is called a cuckoo. So that's right, it's actually a real animal. Funnily enough, you probably heard it, little clocks that go cuckoo. This animal is called a cuckoo, and he makes that exact noise. It's amazing. And I'm going to give you a little fact about them, and then you've got to work out whether you think it's a winner or a loser. So, my fact about the cuckoo is that they live in moorlands, so moors like Dartmoor, or maybe Yorkshire Dales, or somewhere in Scotland that's quite wet. Okay, so lives in wet places. Do you think the cuckoo is a winner or loser? 10 seconds, have a think. Okay, let's reveal. It's a loser. So cuckoos, hopefully you got that right, because they live in wet places like bogs on Dartmoor and things. They are losing out because those places, remember I said earlier, are drying up. So the cuckoos are adapted, remember that word, they're adapted to live in that habitat. So if that habitat changes too much, this bird might not be able to keep up and change enough to live in a drier habitat. And in fact, they can't really, their numbers are going down. So they are losing, unfortunately. So let's look at the next one. This little fellow is called a little egret. And they're quite funny, they've got these big yellow feet. And my fact about these guys are that they usually live in countries in Europe, so like the Mediterranean, like Italy. That's my fact for you. So do you think the little egret is winning or losing at, because of climate change? Have a little think now for yourselves. Okay, right, I'm going to reveal. The little egret is a winner. Hopefully you got that right. So how is he a winner? This bird, funny enough, does like wet habitats, but not the same places as a cuckoo. It will go nearer the sea, in estuaries. Hopefully you've heard of that habitat. It's where the rivers meet the sea. So they like wet places, but near the sea. They've got these really long feet. And because these, really long legs, not feet, because they have come from the Mediterranean, that's getting hotter and hotter there now. So they're now moving to our country, and we're seeing loads and loads more of them. At one point, these guys were nearly extinct in our country, and now, because it's getting warmer, these guys have made a comeback. So it's kind of a good thing, weirdly enough. I don't know, however, how many numbers are in those original countries they used to live in. I should think they're getting less over there, but for our country, they're winning. Okay, next one. Are you ready? This is one of my favourite birds. It's called, are you ready? A long-tailed tit. If you're lucky, you might get these little friendly creatures come visit your garden. They are really funny. They come in groups and they make this little noise like this. Dee, 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 dee. And they're just really friendly. I'm going to let you have a little think whether you think this is a winner or loser. My fact about these guys are that they eat lots of insects. Okay, have a think. Winner or loser? Okay, I'm going to reveal. Let's see what it says. Ready? It's a winner. Now, why is that? Well, little birds, like the long-tailed tit and other garden birds that you might get, like robins, they seem to be doing really well at the moment over winter because there seems to be more food around. Because it's warmer, there seems to be more berries and things around, and insects. Weirdly enough, the insects normally, when it's cold, die out. That's just normal over winter. Lots of insects die. The new ones are born in the spring. Because it's not getting cold, they're not dying off as quickly, which means there's more food for hungry birds like the long-tailed tit. And it's also insects that hibernate. So normally, I hope you know the word hibernate, where an animal sleeps over winter. some insects also hibernate, like butterflies, some butterflies. And because it's not cold, not as cold as it should be, some of these are staying awake, which means, again, more food for the hungry birds. Maybe not so good for the insects, but really quite good for the birds. Okay, so next one, I think this is the last one. Let's see if you get this one right. This is a lovely little bird called the puffin. Now, you would be really lucky if you've seen a puffin. They are quite rare, and they live on the coasts. So they live on cliffs and things. And you can see from what he's got in his mouth, they eat little fish. Now, do you think Puffin is a winner or a loser because of climate change? Have a think. Okay, I'm going to reveal. Have you got this one right? Let's have a look. It's a loser. So the poor puffin is unfortunately a loser because of climate change. Now, why is that? Wonder if you guys have any ideas. Maybe just have another few moments thinking, why do you think the puffin is doing not very well when garden birds are? Have a little think. Okay, I'm going to tell you. So it has something to do with what they eat. Now, you can see the puffin eats these little fish. Now, these are called sand eels, these fish. Now, sand eels, funny name for a fish, they eat little creatures called plankton. Have you heard of the term plankton before? Let me explain. Plankton are little tiny microscopic species of either, it can be animals or plants, very small, that live in the ocean. And these fish that this puffin's got in his mouth will eat the plankton. And then, so that's the food chain. It goes plankton, fish, puffin. The problem is, because the oceans are getting warmer, plankton is not doing so well. It really doesn't like the warm sea. And that's a real shame, because plankton are the bottom of the food chain for almost every creature in the sea. They're really important. So we need plankton, because the lots of little fish eat them, and then the bigger fish eat them, and then the bigger fish eat them. We need plankton. The problem is, it's getting a bit warm for plankton, so there might not be as many fish around, which is bad news for our coastal birds like the puffin. Now, it's not all doom and gloom. You guys can definitely help. Now, you've seen the effects that climate change can have on our wildlife. It can change the habitats. Things are drying up, getting too hot, they have to move. Some can't adapt or change in time to suit their habitat. We can help. You guys definitely can help at school. Have a little think. What can you do to help the wildlife where you are? How can you help the wildlife at school? Have a little think. Okay, hopefully you got some good ideas there, because there are definitely loads of things you can do. So let's have a look what I've got here. You can plant a tree. Now that is probably one of the best things you can do, because trees are home to so much wildlife. For insects, they like the flowers, caterpillars eat the leaves, birds live in trees, other creatures live in trees like wood lice, and lots of other things, lots of birds. Trees are really, really good for helping wildlife. Plus, you probably already know, but when you plant a tree, it's really good because they can give us oxygen and they take away the carbon dioxide. So the carbon dioxide is what's creating the climate change. So the more trees, the better. If you can plant a tree, brilliant. Your school might not have space for trees. That doesn't matter. You could do something else instead. Maybe you could build a bug hotel. That's that picture on the right there. So a bug hotel, you might already have one, and they are really good for insects. So remember I said some insects are struggling. They are getting confused because it's too warm. Sometimes there's not enough food out for them. The more we can do to help them, just generally, the better they are able to survive the warmer temperatures. So if we can help any creature any way possible, it's given them a better chance to help survive climate change. So planting a tree, making a bug hotel, brilliant. Another thing you can do, this little girl has a hand full of seeds. They are to make wildflower meadows. So if you've got space at school, even little spaces in pots, you don't have to have grassland, you can put them in pots, and they are really good for, again, insects. So the more insects that you can attract, the better. As I said, they need the food. The more we can help them, the better. Now, insects are one of the best things you can help at school, and you might not think they're that important because they're really little and you don't really see them. Actually, insects are really, really important for many reasons. One, they're the bottom of the food chain for a lot of animals. So if we help insects, you're also helping the birds that feed them. Remember the long-tailed tit? They love insects. So you're helping the birds. Also bats. Bats love insects. You'll help the bats. You'll help frogs. Remember I said frogs are struggling because their places are getting drier. If you can help provide more flowers, you'll attract more insects that they can eat. Another thing to help frogs, what could that be? You could build a pond if you haven't already got a pond. You could even make, if you don't have space for a school pond, you could make a small pond from a bucket. Any water is really, really good. So if you help the frogs and make sure that it's got water in, it's okay over summer if your pond gets a little bit dry, that's normal. But as long as it has water by winter and spring, that's perfect. So those are lots of different ways you can help wildlife. Now, teachers, there's a really cool campaign at the moment that the Wildlife Trust are doing called Action for Insects. If you type in Action for Insects on Google, there are loads of ideas that you can do at school to help insects as well. Plus for teachers, there's lots of different lesson ideas and things that you can do all around insects. So helping insects, perfect. You can also do, I'm sure you think of lots of other things to do with wildlife, but these are some of the best things you can do at school. Now, obviously, if you want to help stop climate change, there are other things you can do as well. And I'm sure in other talks they'll discuss those. For example, turning off the light when you don't need the light on, saving electricity. Why not take a bike instead of drive to school? All these things will help stop climate change. So we can help. You guys can help stop climate change or prevent it happening so fast. You can help slow it down. And you can also help wildlife. And by helping the wildlife, you're helping them to be able to survive any climate change that comes our way. It's really important, and you guys will be amazing. You guys, I hope, have been inspired to be able to help, because it's people like you that get really excited about nature. You guys are the ones that can really help. So with the teachers' help, with your parents' help, hopefully you can do even just one small difference and then that will be absolutely brilliant. So I hope you've enjoyed my talk. If you have any questions, I think you can put in the little chat bar any questions that you have. So I'll probably be hanging around here for probably another 10 minutes if there's lots of questions, but I'll wait a few moments. If you've got any questions, maybe if you're in class, put your hand up, and teacher can write down a couple of questions and I'll try and answer them for you. So let me know if there's anything you're a bit confused at or any exciting questions that you might have. Okay, thanks for watching, guys. If you haven't got any questions, then I hope that you're inspired today to make a little bit of change where you are at home or at school. Bye for now. So if you've got any questions, let me know. So I'm going to hang around. If you've got anything, I'll be able to see it pop up, hopefully. Oh, I've seen someone wrote earlier they can recycle plastic. That's a really good one. Definitely recycle plastic. The less plastic we have in the ocean, the better for the fish and everything that lives in the ocean. Some brilliant questions coming through. So we have got a question here. What can we do to help some of the losers better adapt? So that's really good. So let's think about some of the losers then that we had. So we had, well, things like the frog was a loser. So again, if you can make a pond, any ponds that you can do, brilliant. Any wet space, remember to make a space for their food, so insects, really, really good. What other losers were there? We had the cuckoo, wasn't he a loser? And the puffin, so they're a bit more tricky. So puffin, the best thing you can do for the puffin would be to help protect the seas. And I think someone said earlier, recycle plastic, brilliant. We don't want plastic getting into the seas. Anything you can do to help the seas will help puffins because you're helping their food, you're helping their fish survive. So things like, yeah, making sure you're not littering in the seas, that will really help those. And what other losers were there? So the cuckoo's a hard one because they live in quite rare places and moors. So there's not much we can really do to help them. But things like the insects and frogs that live there, there's definitely lots we can do for them. Now, what other questions have we got? We've got lots. Thank you for these. What can you do to help slow down climate change? Brilliant question. So lots of things you can do to help slow down climate change. I wonder if in class you might be able to think of some. You could, the main thing is to try and not use as much electricity. So if you have finished with a computer or watching the TV, you can switch off the plug. That will really help save electricity. Turning off a light when you don't need it. You want to save CO2 going into the atmosphere. Try not to take the car as much. If you live near school, you should maybe ask to walk or cycle. If you live far, don't worry, there's not always another way. But there's definitely lots of ways you can help slow it down. Oh gosh, there's so many good ones. What else is here? So how, if you make a pond in your garden, will the frogs know where it is? That is really good. So it's weird, they do tend to discover places. It takes a while, so if you might build a pond, you might not see anything for a whole year. Eventually, animals will start coming into your garden. They'll start exploring, and they'll be able to find. They just somehow know they'll be able to find your pond. So don't worry too much. Something to remember: if you've got a fence around your garden, it's quite hard for animals to get in your garden. With your parents' permission, it's quite a good idea to put a little hole, like a little gateway at the bottom of one of the fences, so that frogs and hedgehogs and things can get into your garden. Definitely ask your parent before doing that though. At schools are normally really good for wildlife anyway, so yeah, making sure they can find their way easy enough, so make sure they've got gaps in the wall or the fences to be able to get to your pond. Okay, another question. So we live on a busy road. Is there any point in us building a pond? Definitely a good reason still to build a pond. So you might be worried that things might get squished on the road. Animals they do try and adapt to what's around them. So whilst roads aren't that good, they don't often go onto roads unless they're trying to get somewhere else. So it depends on what else is around your garden or at school. Is there still lots of green space where they can go into there rather than onto the road? Then that would be really good. I would just still recommend building a pond despite there being a road there, because you're providing a home for lots of animals. And the idea is hopefully they'll spend most of their time there than wandering across the road anyway. You do go for wanders sometimes, but mostly they'll be around there. And it's another good reason if you can tell people about your pond and tell people why you've built it, then maybe people can keep an eye out for frogs as well and be able to help them. These are really good questions, guys. I hope I'm answering them okay. So another really good one. How can I attract and support more bird life in my garden? Really, really good question. So how do you think we can help the bird life in our gardens? Remember what an animal needs to survive. Well, I said it right in the beginning of my talk. I said they need somewhere to live, somewhere to build their house, somewhere to eat food. So if you can provide those for your birds, that can really help. So maybe providing food, if you've got a bird feeder, you can make a bird feeder and put seed in it. That will attract lots and lots of birds. Making a bird house or buying a bird house, really good, because you're helping them come to your garden and have their babies. That's what they do in the little boxes. Also, like what I said earlier, if you can sow wildflower seeds, that's really, really good, because you're attracting the insects, which, do you remember I said at the bottom of the food chain? So if you can attract insects, you'll then attract birds because they'll want to eat them. And do you remember I said the long-tailed tit, who was a winner, the long-tailed tits will definitely benefit from that because they'll like to eat them. So will birds like the robin as well. So bird feeders, bird homes, and wildflowers, definitely really good things for birds. Ponds as well are quite good for birds because they need water, so they will bathe in a pond or drink the water. And if you don't have space for a pond, you can also put a bird bath up. So just like a little dish of water will really help them, especially in the summer or when it's really, really hot. They need that water. So if it's going to get hotter in our summers, remember to keep water for them. Okay, well, another one. These are brilliant. So what can I do? What else can I do to help hedgehogs in my area? Oh, I love hedgehogs. So hedgehogs, so I said earlier, a good thing to do is to have in your garden a little hole so it can get into your garden. So in your fence, you can make sure you've got a little gap so they can come in. If you've got walls and that, it's much easier to have a gap. You have to have a look what you've got. So make sure hedgehogs can come into your garden to begin with. at school, they're normally really good places for hedgehogs as well. If you've got green space, they can find ways into your school. So hedgehogs love slugs. So any long grass you can leave that will attract lots of slugs. They will love that. And what else? They also, what do they do in the winter? Do you know what hedgehogs do in the winter? They hibernate. So hedgehogs in the winter need to hibernate, which means they need to find somewhere warm to live. So providing places like piles of leaves. So this time of year, there's lots of leaves falling on the ground. Pushing that up into a corner and putting some logs there as well will provide a home for it over winter. So they love hiding under log piles and that. If you've got some at school, really recommend putting some log piles out, not just for hedgehogs. They'll be really good for frogs and newts and things as well that need to hibernate over winter. So yeah, definitely. So long grass, hole in the fence, log piles and leaf piles, really good for hedgehogs. You can, if you're feeling really adventurous, build a hedgehog home, which there are lots of designs online. Really fun activity. You can make them either from a cardboard box or you can make them from wood. And then you find a safe space in your garden or at school where the hedgehog can go. So there are lots of fab ways to help hedgehogs. Okay, what's the next question? How can we stop our household pets harming the frogs? That's a very good question. So you're probably mostly talking about cats, I should imagine. Cats are a bit sneaky like that. And to be honest, it is really hard to stop cats getting to frogs. You can stop cats getting to birds if you put a little bell on its collar. And then so when a cat starts to walk or pounce, the bell's ringing, and the birds will fly away. Frogs is a little bit more hard to do that. So it would be more of a case of keeping an eye on your cat. Unfortunately, it is just a natural thing for your cat to want to do. It's a natural instinct for them. So maybe you could probably think of a way of maybe protecting your pond area maybe from cats. It's quite hard because cats do tend to go everywhere. So it's just thinking about what space you have, where does your cat go, and maybe keeping an eye on your cat. Okay. Oh, another one. You guys are amazing. Do I have a favourite British animal, and why is it my favourite? Oh, I've got lots and lots of favourites. Probably one of my favourites are bats. So strangely enough, I love bats. And you guys might not know much about bats, or maybe you do, but bats are not as scary as what everyone says. In Halloween, for some reason, there are always bats around as if they're a scary animal, but they're not scary. In our country, they only eat insects. And bats, I just find them really cute. If you look up a bat from our country, they're actually quite cute. But they're also just really amazing animals. They've got a special power, you might know, called echocoloration. So it's a really long word, echocoloration. It's a superpower basically that they have, which allows them to detect their prey in the dark. So what it is, they make a noise, comes out of their mouth, and it echoes back when it finds their prey. So it's just amazing. The sound bounces off like an echo does when you call down a tunnel. Bounces off their prey, and they're able to then find where their prey is, even though it's pitch black. So I just think they're amazing creatures, and I definitely recommend you guys looking into some bats in your free time, because they are really cool. Oh, what flowers do bees prefer? That's a good question. So I would recommend, if you want to help bees, looking up what native, so flowers that we get naturally in our country, look up those ones. They're the ones I would recommend. We don't want to encourage foreign plants into our country because some of them might spread. But native ones like cornflowers are really good. They're a beautiful blue flower. And also another really good one are herbs like lavender. They absolutely love lavender. So if you can remember, I'll really give you a couple names. So cornflower, if you look that one up. Lavender, really, really good one. What else is a really good one? Where you get lots of things like poppies as well. They're quite good. Daisies. Actually, guys, one of the best ones, which is free, are dandelions. So if you have dandelions popping up at school or in your garden, a lot of people like to mow them down or cut them down. Dandelions are one of the best for bees, and they're free. So if you can stop them being cut down or leave an area where they're allowed to grow, maybe in your garden, definitely try and keep them because the bees love them. Okay, so our cat wears a bell. That's brilliant. Glad they do, because it does definitely help. I think most people say they help anyway. Do any other animals use echocolition in the UK? That's a good question. Yes is the answer. So animals like, weirdly enough, nothing like bats. Animals like whales and dolphins do. So if you've ever watched Finding Nemo, you might have heard Dory doing the funny whale noise. That's the noise that whales actually make in real life. And they'd use echocolition as well, because in the water it can be quite dark. And they use it, they make that noise that Dory does, and they listen back for any echoes, and then it helps them find their way around. And it also helps them talk to their friends, because they're very sociable animals. So yeah, whales and dolphins are another ones that use echocolition. These are fab questions. So next one. This might have to be the last one, or one more after this, because we're running a little bit out of time. So this one says, are wild rabbits good to encourage in the garden? Ooh, very good question. Now, rabbits are a strange one, because they aren't actually technically, I don't think they are native to our country. So they have come here from a different country years and years and years and years ago. And the problem with rabbits is that they take over. So there's a lot of them. That's not, so they don't, the answer to your question is that they actually don't really need help, because there are already so many of them and they do really well on their own. So you don't really need to encourage them, and I don't think they need encouraging. So rabbits, they are really cute. I do love rabbits, but I would say that they're doing really well on their own. They don't need anything to help them. They eat grass, they take over the grass, and so they're doing quite well on their own. Okay, I reckon this is the last one. So this question says, if we don't have a garden, is there another way to encourage the insects? Definitely. So if you haven't got a garden, you could still put out a pot in front of your house, and you can put some soil and some seeds in there. So just having a pot outside your house. If you've got windowsills outside your windows, you can put pots out there as well. They're really good ways to help have your flowers attract insects. You could also build mini bug hotels. So if you don't know what a mini bug hotel is, you can have a look online. They are really quite simple. You could just collect some sticks and put them in a plant pot. So stuff a plant pot, like only a small plant pot, stuff it through loads of sticks and twigs and bamboo, if you've got any bamboo, and that provides a little home for hibernating insects in the winter, or for bees to lay their eggs and things in. So they can be really good. There's definitely ways you can help, even if you haven't got a garden. And as I said, if you look up online, action for insects, there's loads of ideas on there as well. So brilliant, that's amazing. Thank you guys so much for watching, and for asking all these amazing questions. I really hope that I've been able to answer them well enough for you. And now you guys are hopefully ready to go ahead and make a little bit difference for wildlife where you live or where you are at school. So thanks for watching, guys. Bye.